can now push start. Bang. So where this is sitting on the hard drive, I'm really rubbish at these games. I said I like retro games. I didn't say I was good at them. You know, I think I was about 3 years old when my brother came home with the first gaming console to our household, which was Pong. That's right, I'm that old. Now, I've been a retro gamer for years, so I was really looking forward to Plex's newest adventure, Plex Arcade. Plex Arcade allows you to store all your arcade ROMs, or your gaming ROMs, on one computer, and then stream it to anywhere you want and play it on your TV, mobile phone, or any other device. So far it's been mixed response. It hasn't lived up to its expectations. Many can't get their ROMs working, and some can't even get the initial setup working. So I'm going to take you through the setup in stages and visualize each stage, what is going on behind the scenes, so you know where to go to fix it. Please, before we get started, just as a reminder, could you like and subscribe this channel, as I'll be adding more Plex videos as time goes on. Okay, now what's going on? What I'm going to do, if you've not heard of Plex or Plex Arcade, stick around because you might like what you see. Plex has become increasingly popular over the past few years, so I'm going to be taking on a brief tour. There are a number of requirements, all leading to a wide range of issues and errors if you ignore them. So I'm going to list them so that you know what to look out for. If you're happy with the requirements, we'll go through the process with a fine-tooth comb and set up Plex Arcade in clear stages, and you can see what's going on at each stage. We will test the free Plex Arcade games first, so just to make sure that the out-of box is working. I'm then going to show you where they are, and then we're going to add some more games based on the same game cores. We're not going to do anything fancy except add a couple of games, that's it. Make sure they're working, and then we'll look at adding other game cores, so things that would simulate your Sega Genesis, Nintendo, PlayStation, if it can work. And then finally we'll take you through the typical issues and failures that people raise in the first month of release. Now I can only cover what's been discovered, and I'm sure there's going to be loads of other issues out there, so I'll give some general tips where I can. In the description below you'll find lots of links, and I'll update them over time as and when the new features and new things change. In addition, I provide you with a Plex freebies zip file containing some free and legal games. You can add those to your default game locations if you want. They're free and they're legal. Very important there. Legal games. So what is Plex? It provides the means to stream your media from anywhere on any device. So you can place your movies and music on a hard drive, hook it up to a computer and share it to anywhere. You don't need to worry about video formats, resolution, stream quality, as the Plex server's transcoder transcodes it and sends it to your device based on what it can support. Plex Labs always looks to expand the Plex services. So in 2020 they added media for free, such as movies, TV channels, podcasts, news videos, and these are all again offered for free as part of the free service. But the key attraction to Plex is being able to stream your own media content, and has become a strong competitor to media apps like Kodi, Streamio, Universal Media Server, MB. There's loads of other ones out there as well. Now everything I've mentioned so far is free. You can sign up for free, no credit card details are asked for, just provide your email account and password and you're in. Okay. The only limitation, if any, is the Plex mobile app streams for about a couple of minutes. So you know, if you want to pay for that, you can use the mobile phones if that suits your needs. If you don't want to use it, don't pay for it. But if you do want to use it, you can subscribe and you get loads of extra functionality. So you can pay a monthly or annual subscription rate, Or now there's a one-off lifetime payment that's around the equivalent of about 3 annual subscriptions, and after that you never pay again, and you get all the benefits. From late January 2021, they released Plex Arcade, and this allows you, as I said, to stream your old arcade sort of ROMs from your computer to anywhere. Now, this is a brand new service. There have been some teething problems, to say the least. Plex is not as plug and play as your normal video music sort of streaming stuff. There are some hardware restrictions, there's some additional setup requirements and some configuration that you manually are required to do. So Plex has extended the free trial that they had from 7 days to 30 days. And this allows you now to a bit of extra time to iron out the issues you have and a bit more time to experience the service before making a decision. So at the moment, Plex Arcade can only be hosted on a Windows or Mac operating system. So no Linux, no NAS device, not even NVIDIA Shield. Windows 10, 8 and 7 are supported, although Microsoft have stopped supporting Windows 7, so I would not recommend remote sharing your computer on an OS that is vulnerable to new leaks and attacks that won't be fixed. So something for you Windows 7 users to think about. Plex Arcade does not currently support headless servers. Now that kind of makes sense. Headless servers are computers effectively without a display output, and game streaming is accomplished by capturing the video of the game render. That's achieved by using the display output resolution and refresh rate. So headless computers tend to struggle hosting streamed games without monitor or display attached. Now, just because Plex and Parsec don't support it doesn't mean it's not possible. Okay, it is possible. Parsec actually do suggest that you can attach an HDMI display dongle to a headless server to mimic having a display monitor. Dongles you can get online. They're available for under £10, $10, and you just plug them into the HDMI display port and bang, off you go. Parsec requires that your host computer has a graphics card with a hardware video encoder. And HDMI just tends to be a lot more faster handling that and streaming it down. And your computer's display must be connected to that graphics card as well. And there's a link in the description below listing the recommended graphics cards and setup requirements. There's also a guide if you have more than one graphics card attached. If you do not meet this requirement, you're going to see quite a few different minus 15,000 error codes on your screen. And none of them detail what the problem is, it just says error with your hardware. So if you see any minus 15,000s, they all relate to the graphics hardware or the GPU ability of your machine. Plex Arcade requires Windows or Mac, and it needs the Plex Media Server that's at least version 1.21.2. And at the time of the video that I'm sending out now, Plex was actually on 1.21.4. So all you got to do is go in. If you're already using Plex Media Server, just update the version. You'll need a Parsec account to host the game for sharing, so you can access it from any supported Plex app device. Just go to the site parsec.app and sign up. It's free and just needs an email and password. You'll just need to open up the email from Parsec and click the link to confirm the account and activate it. It takes seconds. Plex Arcade is a paid subscription only. If you go to the free trial, 30 days, you'll still need to provide payment details, but you can cancel at any time, no questions asked. If you have a Plex Pass, the Plex Arcade is cheaper, and you just need to add it to your current list of subscriptions. Plex Arcade is only available to the main user in your Plex home, not to managed users. If you're sharing this game with someone else, they will have to have their own Plex member account. Okay, if you're happy that you've met all those requirements, you can proceed and sign up for Plex and Plex Arcade. Now, I've already got a Plex account, but I'm still going to talk through it, and I'm still going to go through the basic setup just in case, so you can confirm and tick off everything that I've done. Now, as I said, I've already got a Plex account, so my friend Joe Saunders doesn't, and is going to take us through going into Plex and signing up and going to get the Plex media server. It's very, very quick to do. And this is whether you want to use Plex Arcade on its own or Plex media server, it doesn't matter, it's exactly the same process. So Joe's gone into plex.tv, click the sign up button on the top right corner, put in your email account and put in your password. That's it, create an account and then click launch. And immediately I've actually got access to Plex's free TV services such as the movies and shows, live TV, podcasts and so on. Now what I can do now is go and get the Plex media server, and this is only if I want to stream my own movies, TV and so on. So you go in and choose the computer that you're going to host your movies on, in this case Windows, and then download the server. Once it's downloaded, open the file up, and the installation is very swift. All you've got to do is approve installing. Need an administrator for this. When it's finished, you just click launch. And what this will do, it will put a little Plex media server logo in the bottom on your system tray, on your start bar. So you just give it a right mouse click. You can open Plex. This will open your browser and launch you to your Plex media server. Okay, Joe's logged in. He just needs to approve and sign in under his account, and he's in. It will have a little few extra introductory points, including a little invitation to paying for it. Joe's going to skip this. He's going to use the free services for now. And then just give a name for the Plex server. So this is not your computer name. You're not going to change the computer name. You're just giving an identification for the Plex server as it is on this particular computer. So you can actually run Plex servers on 3 different devices, all having different identities, and stream them all through your account. Now it does open up to your own local desktop sort of media. Now I tend to get a little bit personal about this, so I tend to delete them. You can add libraries to store your media anytime you want. Have a look at what we've got. So at the top there you've got the typical movies and shows, but there's a more button at the bottom there. If I click that, now shows Joe's new media server, and Joe can click on the plus box on the right hand side and then add a library. That library can be pointing to anywhere they want on a hard drive, and all they've got to do is specify what type of media that library contains. So it is movies, TV programs, music, photos, other videos. Notice though at the moment no games. And that's because we haven't subscribed to the Plex Arcade, but everything else we can just set up, and the process to set up the media storage library is exactly the same no matter what it stores. If we go to the Your Media drop down arrow, we can click Games. It's one of the many places where you can click and launch to subscribe, and again get that 30-day free trial. If you go for the free trial, you will be required to put in your payment details. Okay, so you're set up to Plex and Plex Arcade. Now when you add a library, which is where it sort of contains all of your media, regardless of the library type you're doing, whether it's photos, music, video, arcade games, the setup process is almost the same. Almost. So I'm going to go in and add a new library. So you go to the server where you want that library to be served from. So I want it to be processed from my data games. This is the laptop I'm on. And as you can see, because I've got the Plex Arcade enabled, I can access the games. But it doesn't matter what folder I pick. What I do is I give it a friendly name, and then you click Next, and then you browse and specify which location on which hard drive you want to store all of that type of media. And that's how it works. But with the arcade games, same thing again. I'm going to call this one Retro Games. And when I click Next, I've got this additional feature that says include dozens of classic games from Atari like Asteroid, Centipede, Missile Command. Now, if you tick that, or if you untick that, all you're doing is stopping the selection of games downloading and being placed into your default games folder. And if you don't tick it, once the library is added, you can't go back into this option and select it and download it again. But it's not a problem. I'm going to tick that. The idea is if you don't want them, you can remove them anyway, or you can keep them and back them up. And I'm actually going to show you how to effectively store these properly. So I'm going to tick that, and now I'm going to sort of browse for my games folder as usual. And what that means is I'm going to click the D drive. I've got a Plex Arcade folder that I want to use. There we go. So that's where I want all of my arcade ROMs to go as and when I'm ready. Okay, and click Add. Now, if you don't want to add your own games folder, if you just want to use the free ones, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, you get a default folder anyway. So now I'm going to do is going to click Add Library. And my Retro Games library sits on the left hand side. If I give that a click, at this time of date in February what's the date today? 28th of February, near the end of the month, there's 28 games that I get 28 games. So if I just go and play one of those games, go and play Asteroids, so the out of the box game is working straight away. I don't have any hardware or any graphics issues. This is working perfectly. If you get any errors at this point, you need to get that error number, the error code. Go to the links that I provided for the Parsec error codes and have a look. If it's got a link that's error code 6, then your Plex has been refused access to Parsec. You'll need to relink it. I'll show you that in a minute. But for now, if I just click the select button, there we go. I can now push start. Bang. So where this is sitting on the hard drive, I'm really rubbish at these games. I said I like retro games. I didn't say I was good at them. But go to the menu at the bottom there. I've got little settings so I can actually see what controllers my players are already set to. There is no configuration here. I can't change that, so it automatically detects if you've got a controller in there, or it will ultimately result to keyboard instead. So I'm going to shut the game down. If you get that error 6 error, what you do is go to your account, user account, go to other settings, and you'll see an option to reauthorize the Parsec link, and that'll just open up the Parsec website and ask you to verify granting access to the Plex Arcade. So let's have a look. 28 games. There's a recommended, like you get with your media, recommended TV, recommended movies, so on. And you've got the platforms tab, which actually breaks them down to the different sort of platforms those games are available in. So we've got Arcade, Atari 2600 and Atari 7800. If I click on Arcade, that game I've just played, Asteroids, is an arcade game. It wasn't an Atari game. So let's see exactly what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to open up Plex Arcade folder. As you can see, that Plex Arcade folder is empty. On the right hand side, I want to show you where those games are. They're actually by default stored in your Plex Media Server folder. So I'm going to go into, this is how you do it. You go in, if you type in percentage local app data percentage. Okay, I'm not going to go any more detailed than that. We can take this step by step. So if you put that in, press enter, that will now take you to all of the local applications information for every software, every game that you've installed, but installed to your Windows account. Now, okay, if we go down here, in particular the folder we want is Plex Media Server. So by default, when you go in there and you install the Plex Media Server, you get these folders. Okay, if you install the Plex Arcade subscription, you get 3 extra folders: game cores, game saves, games. Your game cores, your games. So have a look at the games. They're in 3 folders: 2600, 7800, arcade. So have a look at the arcade. So inside the arcade folder, there's the Asteroid game. It's a zip file. I'm going to double click it and open it. Now, if you know your file names and file strips, that looks remarkably like a typical MAME arcade ROM set. It might not be, I could be wrong, but it looks like an arcade ROM set from MAME, which is the Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator. Okay, and these are very popular emulation style sort of game ROMs. Okay, so and that's sitting in the arcade folder. So I'm thinking, wait a minute, I've got some MAME arcade games. Could I put them in that folder and run them straight away? Let's find out. And I've got some free ones, and I mean these are free and they're legal. So these have been provided courtesy of the game manufacturers who own the copyrights of these. So you can actually go into the mamedev.org and there's a link to all these games. I've actually got them in a zip file, and they're in the description below. However, these have got different versions and ROM sets of these games. So if one that I've provided doesn't work, you can go into here and get another ROM set version and see if it works with you. So I've got the Starfire there. There's different sort of ROM sets, and I'm going to bring in Starfire A. There we go. And I'm also going to bring in Gridley. I used to like Gridley. Very old game. I'm a very old person, so I can relate to these games. So there you go. I've brought in Gridley and Starfire A. Now, all I've done is added ROMs. So all I've got to do is go into my Plex. And when you add new movies, new TV, new games, you just go to the server and the library where they're stored and you scan the library files. There we go. Now, if I go to the settings here and go into the data games server and then click alerts, this actually lists what that's scraping and various other things that's going on. So it's found Starfire, it's found Gridley, and it's processed them. So I'm going to go back to Plex. I'm going to go back to my retro games, and there it is. Okay, Starfire has got a lovely icon. Woohoo! Gridley hasn't. Okay, now I'm not too fussed about that because that might come up later, and even if it doesn't, I can go and get the metadata myself. And I'll talk about where the metadata is coming from as well. I'll show you the website where the metadata is coming from. But I'm just going to click the Gridley, click play. Even though I haven't got the metadata, the game core recognizes the game and it works. There we go. I think we'd have stopped enough of that. Let's go back to the Starfire because that's actually quite a pretty colourful one. So I'm going to go into Starfire. You can see this one, it's actually scraped all the metadata, pulled it in, and I can see a little bit of information about it and the screenshot. If I click play, same as before, that now runs that game. So I've not even added any game cores. I'm worried about game cores. If you've got arcade MAME ROMs, you don't need to add any cores because the core's already there that you need. Brilliant. But where is it scraping the actual metadata from and the images? So if you go to a website and go to IGDB, is very much like the movies database, the television database. You've got the games database, if you like. And if I go in there and search for Starfire, you can see that's the actual one that it picked up and scraped. So it actually is coming from here and it's adding all the information from here. There we go. Okay, so far I've just been dropping in games and they're working. What about Nintendo? What about Game Boy? What about Sega Genesis? I want to play some of those games as well. So I've got one Sega Genesis. I'm going to drop that in and give that a go. So list my games. There we go. And I'm going to plop in a new folder. And I'm going to use the folder name. I'm going to put in just Genesis. To be honest, it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't really look at the folder name. It really looks at the ROM and determines what type of game platform that uses. So that doesn't matter. But I'm now going to pop in, and the only one I've got that I'm legally allowed to use, because it came from a collection of games that I purchased, is the Sonic and Knuckles. That's the one I'm going to use. Just going to go and re-scan my library. There you go. Sonic and Knuckles within seconds has popped up. So let's go and play it. The core mapping file is missing for a core for Sega Genesis. Notice it says Sega Genesis. I created the folder called Genesis. There's no Sega Genesis anywhere, so it's already recognised the platform type. But it's basically telling me I haven't got the game core for it. Now, it's easily solved. What you do is you go and list and go and grab the game cores that you need for your games. Where do you get them? There's two websites or two web locations, and these are inside the libretro. And the description to the libretro link is down below. There's a link for where the Windows game cores are, and if you use an Apple Mac, there's the Apple Mac game cores as well. You get them. They're basically in the same site though. So there's a whole list of them down here, and some of these you could try, even though Plex server hasn't announced that they work or not. They might work later on. For the Sega Genesis, there's two. You've got the Genesis Plus GX libretro, which works quite nicely. So I'm going to go and get the Genesis Plus GX libretro. I'm going to open it up. There you go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to where my Plex Media Server folder is, and then go into the Game Cores folder. Okay, you can see the default one we had. I'm just going to drag and drop this next to it. Now that's the one thing. Okay, if I go in now, don't forget I'm doing this in stages, so you can skip this. It's just purely for view. You can see in stages that if I go back here and try that again, doesn't matter if I scan the library forms or not, it still can't find it, and that's because I haven't mapped to it. So you go back to your Plex Media Server, and there's a folder called Plugin Support. And in there will be a retrocores.xml file. All you need to do is open it up with your Notepad, if you like. I'm actually going to use Notepad++. So I like this because it brings it up and color codes it, because it recognizes XML sort of language. You can get that for free. You can download it. Just Google Notepad++, download it. It's totally free. You don't need to. If you're just going to be using it for this kind of thing, just Notepad will be fine. Now, over the month that Plex Arcade's been released, the actual file that it builds by default is drastically changed. Now it's plopping in a lot of maps already for you. So what I do is I just basically have to specify the name of the game core here. If I don't, then it doesn't know where it is and it just comes up with an error. Okay, so all I've got to do is go back to the game cores, pick up the name of that game core, and you can just edit the file name. You're not going to do anything with it. You're just going to copy. You just do Control-C, copy that game. You just want the name. You don't want the extension. So as soon as you press F2, or as soon as you right-click and rename, highlighted in blue, just go Control-C, press Escape. That's it. And then what I'll do is I go back into this XML retro course file and paste the name in. That's all that's needed. Save. And I'm going to close that down. Now I'm going to go back to the games. I'm not even going to start the Plex Media Server. Okay, I'm just going to go back to the games. I'm going to click it and I'm going to click play. and it's worked. I didn't even restart my Plex media server. That doesn't mean that you never have to. It's always a good idea to restart it, because that will go and reload that retro games core file anyway, and make sure that it has picked up where your game core is. But I mean, it's so quick to do. Now, if you don't like the fact that you've got to go and muck around with your game cores and then go mapping them, you're thinking, oh, that's an awful lot of mucking around. One, you've only got to do it once, so it's not a big deal, and you do it for every game core that you need. Okay. And secondly, if you still don't like it, you can go to a website called coremanager.app, where someone very kindly has actually provided a little exe file that you can download and run, and that will allow you to choose which particular game cores you want, tick them. It will add those game cores into your Plex Media Server game cores folder, and it will rewrite your retro games XML file and map it for you. Okay, that's it. So you can use the Core Manager. I'll put a link in there as well for Core Manager, but it's just coremanager.app. Now, we've already talked about certain types of error codes, the error code 6 and the 15,000 range. There are many of them, and as we said before, if they're positive numbers, they're typically Plex related, and if they're negative numbers, they typically would be parsec related. Now, if you get an error, it doesn't give you much help, but you want to go to the Plex forum, you're going to want to go to the parsec forum and ask people. So before you do that, if you get any kind of errors, you'll need to go into your Plex media server, go to the logs, and find your Plex game transcoder logs. Okay, now you'll want to get the log that's around about the time that you got the error, and you're going to want to open it up. It's a text file, so you can open it up with Notepad. And it's going to need a bit of scurrying around, but you're looking for around about the time that you run that particular process. If you get any errors, what you just need to do is highlight and copy the block around that particular point of time that includes the error. The error code will be returned and placed into that script list. All you've got to do is copy it, and then go into the Plex forums or into the parsec forum, tell them what the situation is, copy and paste that particular log in there, say this is what the error is raised, can anyone help me? So if you're going to ask for help, don't do it without the log. The log is quite useful. It gives you, and you might even find from looking at the log, you might even spot the error yourself. Now, the final bit to this is all the games and everything I've been doing has been put into the default Plex Media Server. I've got a games folder that I set up in there, and it's absolutely empty. So I'm no doubt over time I'm going to want to store tons of games, and I don't want on my hard drive. So the last bit to show you is all the games, including the default ones that came with Plex Arcade, can be completely moved into your hard drive and library location of your choice. You don't have to put them in the C drive. So I've just now moved the entire set of all the games, including the free ones, into my new games archive folder, and I'm just going to check to see if they still run. So I'm going to go into retro games. I'm going to scan the library files. It's not going to make a difference, and if I go in there and pick, I don't know, Asteroids again, which is the free one, it still works. Please subscribe to my channel so I can keep you posted with new videos as and when they come out. Any questions you have about this video or anything you would like me to cover, contact me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. There's also an email address if you have any additional support or needs. There you go. I hope that's helped. Going through a lot of this stuff did help me as well, and it's actually helped. I've actually done a lot of this live video stream to other people, so I'm just relaying to you some of the stuff that's worked with them. Stay safe and have fun.